So I'm the founder of Tappollo Media. We are a mobile app company. We make apps for market leaders and startup companies. So initially, I was actually publishing apps on my own. And then I realized that I actually need a whole team to help me publish apps. So I started forming a team to publish our own apps. And gradually over time, from just the experience of launching our own apps, I learned that I can actually use a lot of the knowledge that we gain to help other people to execute their mobile initiatives as well. That's why we started consulting for companies. I think a couple of challenges in terms of when you're starting out to want to build an app. First thing is you don't really know how to go about what are the options out there. There is the team that you have to pick to execute the app, the technology you need to use. A lot of times, if you just pick a team, they might go with whatever they're familiar with, but that may not be what is right for you. And also, the steps that you take to execute the initiative can be very important as well. Because if you take things in a careful manner, you can test out the idea before you can actually spend all the money to do the full-blown app. So taking proper steps to validate the idea and getting a proper design in place, all that stuff is really important in terms of getting a really successful execution out of it. So these are the challenges that a lot of people run into. We solve the challenges by first, we look at, there are a couple of different scenarios. Some folks might already have an app that they already, proved that there's product market fit for. So when they come to us, all we need to do, their challenges is mainly probably bandwidth. They need to crank out more features in a short amount of time. So that challenge we can, obviously help them solve by us implement more features in a quicker manner. The other challenge is more from, say, founders coming to us. They have an idea in their head, but they don't really know if this idea should be done in app and whether if it is done in app, they're gonna get an ROI back from it. So in that case, we would give them sort of step-by-step process in terms of how they can go about validating the ideas in a way that could maximize the learning while minimize the amount of money they put into it. I think we're different in a sense that a lot of teams start out just building apps for other people, right? So they don't really have, they don't have experience building a lot of the apps themselves that are of high production quality. The apps that we have built, first of all, we have to monetize them. And second of all, we have to get them to be good enough for Apple to feature them in the App Store. So some of the apps have been featured by Apple multiple times. One was actually featured in a commercial. So to get to that level, you actually need to know what is in Apple's head. What do they need to see in an app for them to feature that? So that sort of experience is unique. You're not going to get a lot of agencies out there that have that level of hands-on experience spending their own money. The other thing too is that because we spend the money doing developing our own app, we are very empathetic and very careful with how we spend money, right? Even other people's money. We're very careful about that. Whereas with a traditional agency, because they are spending your money without having to consider the risk, because they've never really done it themselves, they could just, they could do it without having that sort of awareness. So the budget is going to be likely across the board, right? When you go ask people. So I always tell people, always focus on the fundamentals when you hire a team. Don't focus on the price, because the price alone doesn't really give you a lot of information that you need to know. The fundamentals are what? The fundamentals are whether the team is solid, they have the technical ability to execute, whether they're reliable, meaning that if you reach out to them, they can solve, the issues that you need them to solve, whether they have obviously the know-how to give you advice as well. Because it's one thing to take the, do as you're told. It's another thing to actually act as a sort of technical partner, whereby they can actually give you a lot of advice from it, not just maybe even technical, but even outside of technical, they can give you advice that would allow you to execute the initiative in a much more well-rounded manner. So yeah, all those things you have to again look at the price and say the price can only tell you very little story about this. At the end of the day, it's the fundamentals. Honesty, integrity, track records. Look at what they've done in the past, maybe even testimonials or references. Those kind of things can round up and help you really sort of reduce the chance of you going with the wrong team. The cost of an app actually can vary greatly, and that's another reason why sometimes when you ask for a quote, it could vary a lot. It could vary depending on the approach that you take to build the app. It could vary depending on how much you want to build right from the get-go. So for a Tinder app, if they were to use the native approach, meaning they use the SDK from iOS, from Apple, and from Android, I would estimate that they would take around 4 months for each platform, right? 3 to 4 months. But that's 3 to 4 months, assuming 3 to 4 months for one platform. So you need to have 4 months for one, 4 months for Android, 4 months for iOS. And then you may have to have someone else doing the backend as well. So if you add up the whole thing, it could be up to 7-8 months to build for both platforms. Now, if you pick something that has cross-platform sort of nature to it, like React Native or Flutter, then it could shorten the time down to maybe 4 months or so. Now, we have in-house technology that we open source that actually could cut it down even further, because we have also pre-built a lot of things that can help accelerate the development. So we have actually built an app that is sort of in the Tinder space, and we were able to get it done in about 9 weeks for all three, like for iOS, Android, and backend. It really depends on who we're dealing with. If a company comes and they want to just deal with it sort of at the regular rate, we charge them $1,400 a day. So depending on how many days it goes for, we multiply that with the usual rate. Now, because this rate is not going to be something that startup can absorb or can withstand, we give them the option to say, you can also, we tell them our cost. So typically our cost is around 20 grand for 3 people, 22 grand for 3 people. And so they can basically pick between 22 grand for 4 weeks, right? So 20 days versus, the bill rate. And then they can essentially pay us the difference in equity. So with this cash plus equity model, we think that it's going to help a lot of startups able to test out the ideas without having to, burn a lot of cash. They basically fall into 2 camps. One is well-established companies or startups that have funds, and basically the other group is essentially a lot of individual startups or individual founders that have very cash-strapped. iHeartRadio, Discovery Channel, and WeWork. There's a spin-off from Walmart. And these are like, well-established companies. MixSpace, TimeHop, these are companies that have, funds, even if you consider them as startups. And then we have the smaller end being, the cat bootstrap startups. You have Hickey, which is the dating app for autism community. And then you have a few other apps that we've built right now for the parking space. These are also the sort of the startups. And so the startups is actually very innovative. There's a lot of, we even helped build an e-commerce solution for Africa, Angola. There's a startup there, and we helped them build out something which is interesting because when you target a different market, the whole dynamic is different. Like they have more Android there versus iOS. So generally, these are some of the apps that we have built. And because we have done across the board from startups to really huge, like big companies, we sometimes are able to sort of borrow some of the practices from each side to apply to the other one. Yeah, I think the main thing is when you get started is you want to validate your idea, right? So first of all, you come up with the idea. Not every idea is worth pursuing, right? Because you're going to come up with a few different ideas. First of all, you got to figure out what are the criteria for the idea for you to select an idea. Does it have to help a lot of people, or does it have to help just a few smaller group of people? But then you can potentially monetize that, in a larger way. So you have to first vet the ideas by setting a few criteria and see which one you should pick and which one you should not. Second thing, once you do that, you can start sort of test it out. Use the fastest way to test it out. Whether it be prototyping it in the crudest way possible, whether it be on paper or, sketch it out and start talking to folks and see if there's demand for it. So these are some of the ways that you can start without first spending a ton of money. Now, if you start having to get more serious about it, then you want to come up with some wireframes. Wireframes being sort of designed, but it's very low fidelity, right? Just kind of like sketches. And then once you have those sketches, again, get some validations from folks. And after you've done the sketches, you can get it designed. So with that high fidelity design, you can take it to even more potential customers and see how they will react to it. Because some of the designs, you can actually make it so that it's interactable. They can actually tap on it, click on it to see, for it to switch to a different screen. That's also a good way for you to actually, for a person to actually validate the idea before they get into development. Because the majority of the cost for an app is going to fall in the development side, not in the design, on the design side. So getting that stuff all validated before going down to development is crucial. Yeah, they can email me. My name is Boon, Boon, at Tappollo, Tappollo.com, or they can go to the website to check out the work that we've done. We also have a company deck that has way more, a portfolio, way more apps that we have built that is included in the deck than on the website, and I can send them that too when they reach out to me.